Welcome to A Healthy Dose. I'm your host, Kelly. I'm a physical therapist here in West Caldwell, New Jersey, and I'm joined by Simona Carputo, who's a health educator who has her master's in nutrition education from Northeastern University and serves the greater New Jersey area. Thank you so much for being here, Simona.
Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone.
Nice. So Simona, let's get right to it. Tell me who you help.
So I work with both adults and children. So obviously for children, the parents are contacting me. Most of the time it's, a parent who is struggling to feed their child and they just need help on, strategies, especially with picky eating. And a lot of them, the parents, feel like if it's a child who's maybe like elementary school age, parents feel like they would benefit from nutrition education. I work with a lot of adults who are just looking to become healthier, whether it is weight loss or just, figuring out which foods are best for them.
Nice. Awesome. We talked a little bit about the picky eater, and we'll dive into this more.
Yeah, that's something I do a lot right now.
Huge problem that people have. So I'm happy that there is to at least learn like, oh, there's a solution to this.
Definitely, yes.
So how did you get into this profession?
I've always really been health conscious. I come from an Italian family. My dad is a chef, so I've always really been into food. I've always been around food my whole life, like most people are, but with my dad being a chef, I've been just exposed to it more. But when I
was that awesome growing up with an Italian father as a chef?
Yeah, it is. But then a lot of the times just like always being forced to eat. So it definitely is hard. But has its pros and cons.
Yep.
I in high school I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. So I think that's when it all really started. I became more focused on trying to pinpoint what was causing my inflammation, and I turned to diet. So I started making changes to my diet, and that's when I realized, oh look, like, maybe taking away more processed foods makes my inflammation go down.
Yeah.
And it really is amazing how much food really affects our bodies, whether it's with mood or just, having a chronic condition. So that was something that really was like, okay, I'm really interested in nutrition. And I was a freshman at the time when I was diagnosed, but then later on, when it was like time to look at colleges, I already knew like I wanted to go for nutrition. And then as a child, I kind of struggled with body image. So my always main focus was trying to help others develop a healthier relationship with food and a healthier relationship with themselves the same way that I did. And it's always about giving back. And that's how I got into nutrition and health education, I should say.
Yeah. Um, that's really cool. It helps when there's like a personal tie, I think, to it. You can relate so much better to the people you help.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. It just makes it easier to understand the individual a little bit more, especially if it's something that, you've been through.
Yeah, definitely. Um, how did you know, or are you still in that process maybe of figuring out like, yeah, this is the right place for me to be. This is the right profession that I'm in.
There's definitely some days where I'm like, this is frustrating. Like, I want to do my best to help some people, but, it's hard to find the right thing to do for each person. But, there's these moments where clients will come in for a follow-up and they're so happy because whatever we worked on, a previous session has been working for them. So seeing that happiness and that like sense of accomplishment from the client's perspective really makes me feel good. So I'm like, this is why I want to do it. Because at the end of the day, it's really just about helping others. It makes me feel good when the client is happy and they're like, oh, what you suggested really ended up working for me. And I'm like, yes.
Yes. Yeah. Check that one off.
Yeah.
Um, that's awesome. You said something a little bit. I'm curious if we could dive into it more. I'm sure it's always a very individual treatment.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about like what you need to know about someone in order to best help them develop a plan, right? What's kind of the psychology a little bit behind, all right, where somebody's at in their journey and how you
Mhm.
do that?
The most important thing I think is that a client needs to be ready to change or want to learn. If they come into a session and they're just kind of like, all right, tell me what to do, it's really hard for me, because if they're not motivated, they're not really giving me much information either, and they just want me to talk to them. So I really want clients to ask questions, and be like willing to learn and make changes to either their diet, or if it's like exercise or any other lifestyle changes. So I really need that commitment. And sometimes it's hard, we think that we're ready, but we may not be yet. So I think that's probably the main thing for me.
Yeah. Um, that's a good point. Um, Especially because I think our relationship with food, we can either be really conscious about it or really not
Yes.
conscious about it.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, maybe what would be like your top question to find out like where somebody is at in that on that spectrum?
I mean, I was just thinking, like, a lot of the times it is clients, their doctors are pushing them to, for example, if someone who has diabetes, they need to make some diet changes. And sometimes it's a doctor who's like, okay, you could really benefit from some, diet change, seeing a nutritionist. And they're like, okay, I'm going to make the appointment. But then they come to the appointment and they don't want to do any of it. So I think maybe just you know letting me know what their goals are. And usually in the intake forms that I give clients, I have them write out two goals, so that is already an indicator that they're ready to make that change. And it's not like just I'm here because my doctor sent me. So that makes it a little bit easier for me, and then I know they're really motivated to make those changes.
Yeah. Um, I think it's such a delicate's not the right word, but like a very intimate part, right?
Yeah.
It's not like you're not eating every day, right? We eat every day, right?
Right.
It's developing healthy habits for people and things that are going to work for them.
And I know it's not easy. Like, I think a lot of people might think that it's because it's what my profession. I just think that it's easy. It's hard and it takes time. You're not going to really see results in a week. It may take months. It may even take a year. But the important thing is that you're working at it. And I have a lot of clients always, at the beginning of a session will be like, you're going to be mad at me, but, and I'm not going to be mad at you if you like maybe ate the wrong thing, because there's really no good or bad. It's just about developing healthier habits. And I always say to them, like, you can tell me anything, don't be afraid to tell me anything, because my only concern is that you're trying. If you weren't showing up to appointments, then I would be like, okay, they don't really care. So maybe not being afraid to talk to me is also another thing.
Yeah. That being honest.
Yes.
There's so it's like the teacher, right? The teachers know when you didn't do your homework, right?
Right.
If you're going to lie about it, it's just not worth it. That's it's good to meet people where they are in that. Uh,
Hmm.
so what do you wish that people knew before they made that first phone call to you or before they booked that first appointment with you? What do you wish people knew about before coming?
So I think probably going back to what I just said, but I'm not like the food police. I'm not, if there is some clients who do want help on like, quitting smoking and things like that. I'm not gonna like, be mad at you if you didn't meet those goals. So I think the one thing that I wish they would know is that I'm there to really just guide them through their like health changes or lifestyle changes that they're looking to make. And that's really about it. I'm not there to get them in trouble or yell at them. I'm more of just coaching them to make those goals, and I mean, sorry, reach those goals. So that's really what I'd like them to know. I'm not going to be mad at them and yelling at them during sessions where they like need to, like not look forward to an appointment.
Right, dread it instead of.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Um, it's interesting. I like the thought of like accountability. There, right?
Hmm.
I'm thinking like, okay, I'm gonna see Simona on Friday, and like, what do I want to be able to tell her versus
Right.
what might I be a little maybe embarrassed to tell her, or maybe like not
Mhm.
so proud of, that happened this week. um, having that accountability in a professional who's not going to judge you for it
Right.
is huge. Um, and again, as long as you say, well, I'm going to show up Friday, and you're going to keep me on board because at least I'm trying, right? I'm not going to be perfect
Right.
trying. I think it's good to have a human side to you.
I agree, definitely. Yeah.
Awesome. So what could somebody expect if they had a first visit with you? What does that look like, and how long? Success is always like a relative term, but how long till they started maybe seeing some or noticing some success?
Yeah, that's hard. It really just again depends on the case. Usually my first appointments run for about like 45 minutes. I like to have the first appointment a little bit longer than the follow-up appointments because I get to know the client better, just going over like intake forms, why they made an appointment. They get to know me better, my way of treating. But again, it depends really on the case, why the individual's coming in, motivation level, things like that.
Yeah. Um, awesome. And so, like, as far as a plan, typically, I would imagine that you'd have some people who you might meet with them once and say,
Mhm.
these are the changes that I would make. And they would say, great, I'm ready to change. This is awesome. Thank you. And they take it and they run. Or there's
Mhm.
some people who you might, meet with weekly or monthly. Um,
Yeah, so usually I do bi-weekly, but I always, give the client the option. Like if you're someone who wants to see me weekly, that's fine. If you feel like, you could go with every 3 weeks, that's okay too. I usually just suggest a bi-weekly and then, I take their suggestions. Um, I do implement intuitive eating, so I try not to focus on body size, like the number on the scale kind of thing. Again, I try to really help the clients develop that healthier relationship, and with that, it does take a few sessions. And I start out, I baby steps because you can't really jump from like point A to like Z all of a sudden. It's like you need baby steps to make changes. And I do make that very transparent, especially in the first appointment. And I like to set goals with the clients on something that makes them feel comfortable. So that's kind of how a first session would go. I kind of just explain it to them. And if it's something that maybe they're like, I really just want one appointment and that's it, and it's not their thing, that's fine as well. There's definitely clients who are looking more for a guided, like kind of like a meal plan.
yep,
And that is something that I'll do, like, either weekly meal plans or a monthly meal plan I'll give to a client. And that's a little bit different, where if they're just really trying to, I need new ideas for what I'm making my family for dinner, that kind of thing.
yep. We all could probably benefit from that because
Yeah, instead of having like same thing over
yeah,
and over
we
again.
have like our 10-day rotation that we go through,
Yeah,
and that's it because it's easy and it's what we know. But
definitely.
it's always good to mix it up, and I bet you could provide like tweak this recipe just a little bit, right? Use this
Yeah.
instead
Yeah.
and use
I always do that, like kind of recommendations, if especially if there's a client maybe missing out on protein during the day. I say like, I give example A, B, and C, and say like, which one would you feel comfortable incorporating into your lunch? And so I always try to work with them again, whatever makes them feel comfortable, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that they're going to be eating it. It's not me. So I don't want them, choosing a food just to make me happy and then they go home and don't eat it.
yep,
So
yep,
that kind of thing.
get in the fridge type of thing. Yeah. Um, yeah. So along that line, like what types of people, you kind of alluded to this before, like what types of people have the most success with you? And again, success is a relative term.
Right. I mean, I think just again, like I said, I know I'm saying it a lot. People who are motivated, but also just someone who really cares to make a change. Um, Again, like if it's just really them coming in because someone made them come in, I really do feel like it's not, it might help, but until they're like 100% committed, it's hard. They may even do well for a few weeks, but then they might
Yeah.
fall back
Yep.
because, that commitment's not there. And I have a lot of clients who will make an initial appointment and then not fill out any forms and not show up to the appointment. And that's usually an indicator they're not ready for it. And I don't push them, I say like, hey, you missed your appointment. Whenever you're ready, like let's reschedule. And I think that's usually an indicator, like they're not showing up and not rescheduling, then they're probably not ready.
Yeah, they're not at that point.
Hmm.
I think a healthy way to approach that because you're not.
Right. And it's, I think it's the same thing with even just going to a doctor's appointment and, being prescribed medication and not taking it. Maybe you're not really fully committed to getting better or
Yep,
missing like your doses and things like that.
yep, yeah, exactly. Um, what is one question you wished that your clients asked you more?
This is a hard one. I mean, I don't know if I can think of a specific question, but I do wish that clients felt more open to asking me more questions. So one of the program that I use with clients, it's like a HIPAA compliant platform where there is a messaging component to it, and I feel like not a lot of the clients use that, and I always tell them, even if we don't have an appointment for like 3 weeks, you can always send me a message. I'm always going to answer you. Through that portal, I also send them like recommendations in between their appointments, and I kind of wish the clients would utilize the portal a little bit more, and engage with the food logs or just the lifestyle things that are in there. So I guess that's something I would appreciate more than more of a specific question.
Yeah, um, I feel like it might be a little bit intimidating, right?
Yeah, probably.
To because I'm just thinking, what would I be like? And I don't know if at the end of the day I had to write down everything I ate. Like, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I mean, I try not to like have them, unless it's someone who really wants to keep track of their food. I
Yeah,
try not to do that, especially because, it's like sometimes it becomes obsessive too, with just like always
right,
writing down your foods and,
right.
seeing how many calories you have a day. But it's more about like, if you have any questions about like, hey, is this food okay? Like, do the ingredients on this like product seem sketchy? Like, should I not be putting that in my body? Like, I'm okay with that too. And I wish clients were more comfortable with, reaching out to me for that. And I think it comes more from me. Maybe I might ask too many questions when I see a doctor, but I just like knowing. And I mean, it is your health at the end of the day. So I feel like that's what I want clients also to do with me.
Yeah. Um, I like that. I like that you said like it would be really helpful to be able to snap a picture of a nutrition facts and send it to
Yeah.
someone who knows what it really means.
And they
Like,
can do that through the portal. Yeah. And,
yeah.
they can either look up a food or send me a picture through that. And I feel like not a lot of them do it.
Um, it's also not something that we're used to having as a resource either.
No, definitely.
We're never really taught that. Gosh, like I'm going back to sixth, seventh grade, like health, right? And I wish
Yeah.
they would teach us how to what's in our food and what fuels our bodies and um, what's in our food and what it does then in our bodies. And I
I know. Nutrition is definitely not taught enough in schools.
yeah,
I think maybe we have like a week or two of like just basic nutrition in elementary school or even like middle school and high school. But I do think they're working on it, like trying to, implement it into the curriculum.
yep,
So hopefully it gets there.
yeah, I hope so too. Um, because we need it, right? Again, and so much of that you said you mentioned let's dive a little into this, right? Of working with parents
Hmm.
and kids, like how what's a typical conversation with a parent? Like I would imagine that complicates things a little bit because then if you have two parents and a kid, that's three personalities to manage,
Yeah.
right? Three meals a day, right? Snacks, everything in between. So how do you balance that for families?
Yeah, so I mean, the most common complaint is, of course, I make my child food and they're refusing it. And I usually get that around between of the ages of like 2 to 5, sometimes a little bit older, but it is common between those ages. And it's actually a very normal thing because a child's appetite ends to slow down a bit as they get a little bit older. So I always tell parents, like you probably very used to, from newborn to like age 2, your child is eating whatever you're making them. They don't really have a choice at that point. They're not really talking. But as they're getting older, they're getting a little bit more independent. And that comes to also the food choices. So they have more of a say of like what they want to eat and what they don't want to eat. And that may be not eating. um, so I try to really work with them to understand that, and exposure is key. So I always tell parents, if you notice that there is certain foods that your child dislikes, don't avoid giving it to them, because you don't want to have them be fussy and crying or whatever the case may be, but instead continue offering it to them. It helps preparing it a different way, you know, incorporating with incorporating the food that the child dislikes with the food that they may really like. So for example, if it's, I don't know, like chicken and broccoli, the child really hates broccoli, loves chicken. So only maybe putting like one piece of broccoli on the plate, and or two pieces, something really small where it's not overwhelming the child. Yeah, but the more they see it, the more comfortable they'll get. And then eventually, I mean, it's going to take some time, it may take months, but eventually they're going to go and pick up the broccoli and eat it. And it's happened. But it definitely takes time. And something that I've noticed is that parents get really stressed, and I don't blame them. I mean, especially after, like a long day of work, coming home, cooking for your child, and they're not eating. I see where it can be stressful. So they just end up giving their child like a cookie or, crackers, yogurt, whatever, little things.
Mhm.
So I try to just, work with the parents to implement a more of a like a smaller meal more frequently kind of thing. And I know it definitely gets, a little bit more complicated if the child's in school or like daycare, any of that stuff. But just planning meals that work with the child. If a child is a little bit older, where, like let's say it's a 5-year old, and I can talk to them, pick out foods together that they are comfortable with,
Yeah,
so it's working with the parents, but also the child as well.
yeah,
And just kind of, I always tell them, I know it might be stressful and overwhelming, but you just got to really continue and try not to, give up, and be patient with the child.
yeah. Um, I like that. I like the psychology behind that of like, well, there's
Hmm.
one little broccoli inside all this chicken that I really like,
Yeah.
right? And
I
that
mean,
gives
there's
exposure to it a little bit.
Yeah, there's so many studies, even instead of like saying to your child, like, come on, eat it, one more bite, instead of just letting them be, they'll eat it. They're not gonna just, not eat the whole day. And I think that's a fear for a lot of parents.
Yep.
My child's not eating enough, are they healthy? And what I always say is try not to focus on weight, like percentiles, all that stuff. Because as long as your child is growing consistently, they're probably eating enough. You may think that they're not eating enough, but when you go for, your like annual checkup with the child, and doctor says like, oh, he's doing great, like weight is okay, that's really all that matters.
Yeah.
If
And a linear growth.
Yeah, like you don't really want to obsess over the number. It's just really about being consistent. Of course, if there's like a 10-pound weight drop, or the opposite, a 10-pound weight gain, maybe we're like, okay, what's going on with the diet? And or is there another underlying medical condition, that kind of thing.
Yep. Um, yeah, I think that's really important. And so I'm glad you referenced some studies. I might ask you for any resources on that stuff because I find it fascinating. And
Yeah.
especially when it becomes like evidence based, right? And you find good research that says like the verbiage you use around that stuff, or the psychology around it, or
Hmm.
the strategies, the simplest things that like, and we'll talk
Yes.
about in a minute, right? But the simplest things, like,
Crazy.
how does everyone not know this, right? Or why
I
does
know.
it not know this?
I mean, every child is different, so it's also, one child may be a little bit harder to get to eat. So I think that's why it also, the studies, as good as they are, sometimes it's just, once into practice, it becomes a little bit harder.
Yeah. Well, and that's where you come in, right? Because you know
Right.
the research behind stuff, and you can say, okay, well, this kid fits into this category kind of with these two or three kind of caveats
Hmm.
that are specific to them. Let's try this strategy.
Yeah.
Um,
And one of the things that I do offer to clients is like it's a 1 week picky eating course, and I call it a course, but it's more of just me engaging with the clients a little bit more.
nice.
And it's offering like recipes and activities that they can do with their child at home that engages them in the kitchen, and having them stay involved in the meal preparation. picking out foods at the grocery store when mom or dad goes grocery shopping. Like there's like an I Spy game that they can do in the grocery store. And they get that for 5 days, and each day is a different activity or a different recipe. One of the recipes is, making pizza with your child, and the tomato sauce, incorporating veggies in the sauce so the
Cool.
child doesn't see it, but gets,
Yeah.
pizza. What child doesn't want to eat pizza?
Yeah. Right.
But incorporating veggies that way.
Oh, cool.
So that's something that I do with them as well.
Yeah. That's a really cool strategy. Um, what would you say are like your top like one, two, or three things of like your area of expertise, or like your one
Mhm.
thing that walks in the door and you're like, yes, like I got, oh, I got whatever, a
Yeah.
picky eater, awesome.
So definitely number one would be picky eating,
Yeah.
since I do deal with a lot of that. The other thing that I'm also very good at, I guess, or work with a lot of people with, is intuitive eating. And that's a practice that I try to implement in most of my sessions. I try not to, again, like I mentioned before, I try not to focus on like numbers, or, how many calories a client should be eating in a day. I try to work with a client, even if it is someone who's coming in for weight loss. I try to help them, instead of focusing on the number of, how many meals I should be having in a day, how many calories I should be having in a day. I want to lose 10 pounds kind of thing. Kind of just trying to teach them how to follow their hunger cues, learning when their body is telling them they should be eating or when they are full, developing a healthier relationship with food, and incorporating a variety of foods. So you don't want to restrict any, anything really, like no chocolate for like a month, that kind of thing. Because then you're going to end up binging on it, unfortunately. And, if any weight loss that really did happen, it's just gonna, you're gonna gain it all. Wait, you're gonna gain it back. So I really do work with just developing a healthier relationship with food and yourself as well. And going back to studies, intuitive eating has been used in so many, like eating disorders, uh, patients with diabetes, people who have a healthier relationship with food end up being just healthier overall, because they're not doing that like overeating or undereating kind of thing. So, there's studies that have shown that people who have diabetes, their blood sugar levels end up being more controlled if they are an intuitive eater. So I do implement that in most of my sessions. And, I try to do activities with a lot of my clients where it's like just understanding your body. So for like once a week, or not once a week, I should say, like on our bi-weekly appointment, I give them something to complete for their next session. And it's more something that they can think about. It's not really, it's not like I'm grading them. It's just so they get to know themselves a little bit more, how they deal with food. Let's say, are they an emotional eater, or is it someone who just, maybe is not eating enough, that kind of thing. So they they get to know their patterns, and then I understand them a little bit more too. So that way I know exactly what will work best for them.
Yeah. Um, I try to tell, like, I'm glad that you said that, and I'm actually going to ask you, could you put a short definition on intuitive eating, just because that's
Yeah.
a relatively new term for me.
Yeah, so intuitive eating is basically ditching the whole diet approach. And I think it's something that more healthcare professionals are starting to implement, just because, for years we've always put people on diets, and it's great short term, but long term, it doesn't really end up working. And so intuitive eating is more of a lifestyle than a diet. So, again, it really goes back to following your hunger cues. A lot of people, I think, struggle with, not really understanding signals that their body is telling them. So, yes, we have our stomach growls when you're hungry, but there's also other things that your body tells you when you're hungry. Are you tired? Are you grumpy? So kind of not ignoring that.
Angry, if you
Yeah,
will.
definitely. So following your body signals, and following them as well when your body is telling you like, okay, now you're giving me too much food. I'm starting to feel a little bit nauseous. I think this is time when we stop. Um, you know, and with the intuitive eating comes the health at every size aspect as well. Um, you know, there is no perfect body. And maybe just because someone may seem overweight or according to a BMI number, they're overweight doesn't mean they're unhealthy. So taking that into consideration. And I think that's why I also try not to focus on numbers, even especially in children too. Like percentiles really don't mean anything to me because a child may be plotting at the 90th percentile their whole life. And they just, or maybe are just is they're a taller child. You have to take so many things into consideration. Maybe it's a child that plays sports, so there's more muscle. So that's why also with adults, when you're implementing intuitive eating, you try not to focus on those numbers because maybe it is someone who's more athletic or they're working out more. So there's so many things to take in consideration, and you really don't want to obsess over numbers. And that's a big thing with intuitive eating. Trying not to trying not to diet where like you're eating 3 meals a day and then eating 2 snacks and exercising for 5 hours, that kind of thing. There's a whole like um, you know, moving so that you're feeling well, not that you're burning calories. And that's another aspect of intuitive eating as well. You're not exercising to burn 1,000 calories. You're exercising because it makes you feel good. It helps with your mental health. Maybe you're getting a little bit more toned, that kind of thing. But you're not obsessing over types of workouts. You're focusing on things that make you feel good. And the same goes with food. If are you craving a piece of chocolate, go eat it. But then, don't eat like 20 pieces of chocolate, because that's where intuitive eating comes in, where it helps you balance that out, because restricting then goes to overeating. So again, it's really just about developing a healthier relationship with food and understanding, how you use food as either coping mechanisms or are you overeating, undereating, things like that.
Um, there's a, I forget where I first read it, and I'm a physical therapist, so I know more of the physical,
Mm-hmm.
the nutritional, but they said that, weight doesn't necessarily correlate with fitness.
Right.
And I guess you could stretch that and say weight doesn't necessarily correlate with health status, right?
Right. Yeah.
Or um or like lifestyle, really, right? And it's funny, I don't know if you've ever watched a marathon. But you watch a marathon and there are all shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
All shapes, cut everything, right? And it's like you'd never pick one of those people off the street and say,
Mm-hmm.
here she is running a marathon, until
Right.
you see them do it. And I've always found that really interesting, especially because of the society we live in of we snap judge right away of like, oh, they're fit.
Yes.
She's so skinny, she must be so fit. She hasn't,
Yeah.
she hasn't worked out in 10 years, right? And it's amazing to me.
There's
Uh,
definitely a stigma to that. And I mean, I think there's more of a stigma with being overweight. I mean, we definitely do have an obesity issue, and I get it. But I do feel like because of that, so many people look at people who may be overweight like, oh, they probably have like 20 health conditions, like diabetes, high blood pressure. And it's not always true. And it doesn't mean that a person who's maybe like 120 pounds doesn't have a health condition. Someone can develop type 2 diabetes and still be at a, normal weight to science or whatever it is,
yeah, the
you
natural
can still be unhealthy, not eating great, and still be, weighing like 120 pounds.
right, looking a certain
Fit, like you said. Yeah.
um, yeah, that's really like it's helpful to hear it from the health and nutrition
Mm-hmm.
side of things too. Um, awesome. So um, I don't think I gave you guys the questions beforehand. I've came up with this one and I like it. So
Okay.
you're unprepared for this one, but you'll do it. Um, how do you best like practice what you preach?
Yeah, so I think that's a really hard thing for, I mean, humans in general. It's like you don't take someone else's advice, but you can really do well at giving others advice,
Yeah, yeah,
that
right. Do
kind
it
of
this
thing.
way. Yes. Yeah.
Um, I mean, I'm not perfect. And, I definitely have days where I probably like, like stress eating, and should probably like think about like, oh, I'm eating because I am not dealing with my stress the right way, like that kind of thing, for example. But I definitely try to really listen to my body. If I am feeling tired, and I'm like, okay, well, I slept really good last night. Why am I tired? Maybe I didn't eat enough. So I try to, like, have a snack if it's in the middle of the day. With my RA, a lot of the times it's hard to exercise. So, and sometimes I feel like, oh, I'm not exercising, I'm not doing anything, I'm being lazy. So it's kind of like trying to tell myself, like, no, you're not exercising because your joints are hurting you, and you would be hurting yourself by exercising.
Yeah.
So I definitely am not perfect. So I definitely try to, during the day, like, tell myself the same things. And, you have good and bad days. And I think that's with everyone.
Yeah.
I still make my own, I have my flaws. So it's
Everyone
with
does.
everyone. Everyone's a work in progress.
Yep. That's exactly it. But hearing you say that, I'm like, yeah, I can recognize, if I didn't sleep good last night, or if I need
Right.
a snack, right?
Yeah.
That's so helpful to be able to draw that distinction, because I'll be honest,
And
I've never thought of it that way.
yeah, and a lot of the times I think, like, maybe we're so busy that we kind of just forget to eat. Maybe you would, like, booked yourself like back to back clients, or you're doing physical therapy all day, and now you're like starving, and you're in such a bad mood. So it's that kind of thing, making time to feed your body, give it fuel.
Yep. I love that. Um, who would you say, like, if is there a person or a book or a philosophy that has influenced you as a provider?
Yeah, so I had a professor when I was at Montclair State during my bachelor's degree. She was my professor, but I actually was really grateful to be able to intern for her. And she was actually someone who inspired me to, she has her own weight wellness center, and she works with adults and kids. And while I was interning there, I was like, oh, this sounds like I could really do this. Like, I really want to do my own thing, like, open up my own wellness center. So, and to this day, I still talk to her. Like, I'll reach out to her, and she's someone who inspired me because she made it look so easy. And I'm sure there's so many things that go with having your own business, but she was just always so happy when she worked with clients, and that just was always very inspiring to me. So I would say that she's probably someone who helped me a lot, and to this day, I still talk to her. Like, if I need any advice on something, I'll reach out to her. So yeah, I mean, it's good to have that person who, like, she not only was my teacher, but she was someone who I was able to see work outside of the classroom, and, like, actually be more hands on. So although she was teaching us, about nutrition in the classroom, I was able to see how she actually implemented what she was teaching. So that was really cool.
Doing that's huge to have, like, a mentor in that realm. And then it's amazing and really cool that, like, I'm sure, should you ever need anything with your business, she would, I'm sure she'd
Yeah,
be
hopefully.
there. I'm sure of that.
Yeah.
Awesome. So if one of your clients needed you, like, after hours, you mentioned that portal, which sounds like a really
Hmm.
cool avenue. Like, if they had to reach you for whatever reason, are you available?
Yeah. So yeah, definitely the portal if they are already an existing client, or just even just through email. I answer my emails pretty quickly, unless it's like, I'm not away or something like that. So, and they can send me an email at like 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't care. Just send me the email, and I'll answer you as soon as I can. So yeah, I mean, I'm very flexible with that. Like, with even sending me messages, like text messaging, not on my personal phone, but through the client portal, because it's all HIPAA compliant, of
Yep.
course.
Yep.
But yeah, anything that, if they're more comfortable with email or calling me and leaving a message, that's fine. And I try to get back to them as soon as I can.
Nice. Love it. Cool. Um, so I just have one last question for you, but before I ask it, I just want to say thank you so much for, first of all, for what you do, because you're helping people live healthier lives and longer and better lives. And second,
Thank you.
spending time with me and telling me more about what you do and who you help. I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me. This was awesome.
Yeah, it's been great. Um, so the last question is what would be the best way for someone to reach out to you if they did want to start working with you?
Sure. So I, of course, email, like I mentioned. So my email is wellnessbysimona@gmail.com. So you can schedule an appointment, or if you have a question, just, like, hey, I'm looking to schedule an appointment, where do I start? And once they email me, I usually just send them my, the link to the Practice Better, which is the platform that I use.
Oh, cool. Right. So you just do their intake stuff.
Right. Yeah. So everything is like electronic, and which works perfectly in a COVID world.
That is, it's so much.
And yeah, I also have an Instagram. If anyone has an Instagram, Wellness by Simona, and on there is a link with I have recipes, blogs that I'll post, and they can schedule an appointment through there as well on the Instagram.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, I will link all that up like in the show notes here and in the YouTube description, so that people can have easy access to you.
Perfect. Yeah, but if anyone ever has any questions, again, like I said, and I mean it, just send me an email, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Cool. Love it. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you.